Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Stories from the road. Truckers, bus, and cab drivers of /X/. Give us your best stories.
I'm on /O/ whenever a truck friend has a thread going. Otherwise, I'm a /K/transplant. And I have a not that great story, but why not? Be me, hauling bulk hazmat chemicals to Charlotte, North Carolina. Get a load late, it becomes a night run. Happened 2 weeks back, heading south down Interstate 79 through West Virginia, taking US 19 shortcut to Interstate 77. I have an eerie feeling at night the road was wet, probably from the first solid rain since winter ended. Foggy as hell, however, when I got to US 19 south. Same route as the new River Gorge Bridge. Everything is clear, just a calm night. Though going through that way at 2 a.m. is creepy enough when suddenly, out of nowhere while going through a heavily wooded area, fog just rushes out of the dense woods like a freight train, or very much like an avalanche, completely engulfing my truck and totally blocking me from seeing anything. Then suddenly, it is gone. Left me with a very rustled and disturbed feeling though. This food moved as fast as my truck did, straight from in a woods. I've driven in fog and seen much fog before, and I've never seen fog move so swiftly, and dare I say deliberately. That whole night was weird, and knowing the type of road it was the type of night that the fog could swallow you up, make you blind to a sharp curve and spit your truck out off the side of a mountain.
I haven't had experienced anything odd when I do my current newspaper route between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. It's the route I did before. I started my newspaper job at the beginning of November back in 2013. They didn't have any routes open close to my house, so they gave me a temporary route that was in the county north of mine until a route opens. People who have done the route before me were pretty good in pointing out addresses that were usually hard to find and making corrections on the route book. As I was familiarizing myself with the route book, one of the guys mentioned one of the roads on the route gave him the creeps, and I didn't really think much of it, since I just assumed he was trying to pull my leg because I was a new guy. Well, I didn't really see anything wrong with the road when I got to it. It was an old road with trees almost right at the asphalt, and roots were pushing parts of the road out, creating bumps and cracks. I only had one customer there and nothing out of the ordinary happened. Just the sound of crickets chirping and dogs barking. The next night I talked to the guy about not seeing anything, to which he replied that things will need to be in the right conditions in order to see it happening. He told me I would have to park and turn off the car whenever it's foggy out for about 10 minutes and it'll be there. Well, the next several nights were pretty clear, but it was that weekend it had rained the day before and fog had appeared in the area, which I figured I should try this out. The fog was dense. You could only see a couple 100 feet ahead of you. When I got to the road, I went ahead and delivered my paper and then turned the car around and waited with the car off. I waited for what seemed like forever. The crickets weren't chirping today, but the dogs were still barking due to my presence. As 10 minutes had passed, nothing happened. I figured the guy was just playing a trick on me and just wanted me to finish my route late, since we have a deadline, but I figured I should wait for 5 more minutes and then continue with my route. Sure enough, 5 minutes had passed and nothing had happened. I should mention that the habitants here like to leave their outside lights on. I gave up on waiting and started grasping the key. Before I could turn it, all the lights went off. It wasn't just the house near me that had their lights off. The houses next to it and the one street lamp went out. The dogs stopped barking as well. I looked around and I couldn't see anything. I figured I'll wait a few more minutes. But then the rear of my car started to get lower as if somebody was pressing their weight on it. I lost it, started the car, and bolted out of there. The lights came back on as I was leaving. From then on, I continued delivering the paper there without stopping, until I got my new route.
2 a.m., driving my truck down a quiet country highway in Texas. Take the turn off onto gravel road. It's been raining. Go real slow but steady so as not to get the rig stuck in the mud. Approach the turnaround. Slow down even more. Suddenly surrounded by dozens of sets of glowing white eyes floating in the darkness. Most are just staring. A few start coming slowly closer. More and more eyes appearing, starting from the ground and coming up. Jesus, some of these things must be huge. They're almost on level with the door. One pair of eyes creeps closer, enters the beam of the headlights. I see the landlord decided on Black Angus this year. Wait for the steer to get off the road, park my truck, go into my house, post about it in this thread.
Circa 2008, I drove over the road for a large company. I saw a few things I couldn't explain, and saw a lot that I could. One thing that always bothered me was getting lost in the middle of nowhere, West Texas. It took place from around 1 a.m. to about 1:30 a.m., some random one-lane road with crops about 3 feet tall on either side. The sky was pitch black, and I couldn't see any stars or the moon. There was zero light outside of my truck lights. I stayed at about 15 to 20 miles per hour because I didn't want to hit a deer, cow, drunk, or anything. As I was trucking along, glancing in my mirrors about every 15 seconds to make sure my trailer wasn't leaving the road, I noticed on my left crops were falling over like something was running through them, staying alongside my truck. I immediately figured it was a coyote or a wolf or something that happened to be running through, basically a coincidence. Thinking nothing of it, I looked to my right and saw the same thing, like something was keeping pace with me. I proceeded to think maybe I was just really tired and seeing things. I looked forward and saw something in the road about 75 yards away. I slowed down as I got closer, because I didn't know what it could have been. I looked to my left and right and saw the crops falling at the same speed I was doing still. The closer I got to the thing in the road, it looked like some kind of mangled black dog. I got about 15 feet from it, and it contorted and looked all messed up and looked right at me, and I swear it had glowing red eyes. It looked like it was snarling, and once I was so close, it looked like a mini version of the dog things from Ghostbusters, except uglier. I wasn't going to stop, so I hit it. I felt the slow impact, and I heard this scream that turned my blood into ice like nothing I have ever heard. It hurt my ears, it was so loud. I sped up and started running about 55 miles per hour and got the hell out of there. So I finally made it to a truck stop or maybe a rest area, I can't remember. It's morning and plenty of sunlight lets me see what damage happened. I got out of the truck and walked to the front, and my bumper was bent in slightly, otherwise no damage. There was this black sludgy looking substance like it's blood or something. I checked all around for any remnants or something. Absolutely nothing other than that black sludgy substance on the bumper. I have no idea what I hit, what was running alongside my truck, or why it wanted to challenge me. I have a few more stories if anyone wants to read them. In 2006, I had been driving on my own for about a month or so, and had a load of nice leather office chairs going to Maine. No big deal, got about 1,500 miles out of it. I end up getting deeper and deeper in the woods on some little road that looked in way too good a shape for the area, very new looking and smooth. I can't find this place at all. The directions I got were garbage. I call the place and get proper directions, and find out I am on the road I need to be. Just keep going, they told me. I make it to a tall chain-link gate blocking the whole road, connected to a chain-link fence running into the woods on either side. A man in an army uniform came out of nowhere and hopped up on my steps, one hand on my mirror, and knocked on my window. Scared the crap out of me. He asked for the paperwork. I gave it to him, and he opened the gate and told me to drive forward about 300 feet and stop. I did, and another soldier came up and told me to give him my driving license, any matches or lighters, smokes, cameras, or phones. Okay, not sure what is going on at this point. He tells me to follow the road until I come to a white building and back into the dock. I follow his instructions and find the building, a white building with black windows and a single dock door. I hop out of the truck to open the trailer doors and back in. I get back out of the truck and just walk around for a few minutes when a guy in a suit walks up to me and asks me what I was doing. I told him I was just stretching, and I asked what this place was. He just said it's a government building. I asked why there were army guys around, and he told me to get back in my truck. Yeah, I don't want to go to some black hole prison, so I get back in my truck. As I look around, this place is eerily quiet and completely surrounded by thick trees. I sit in my truck and I notice there are people moving in the woods. I assume they are more army guys. Weird, but whatever, I watch too many movies. As I am leaving, I look in the woods and I see them staring at me about 40 feet in. I can barely see them. They are all black, about 7 or 8 feet tall. Totally motionless, but I can feel them staring. There are about 15 of them scattered through the woods. I get about a mile down the road. The woods are still thick. I stop to smoke a cigarette and I see them about 15 feet in the woods staring at me. I just sat there smoking, staring at them. I could feel this eerie, horrible sense that if I didn't leave, I could be in serious trouble. I tossed my smoke out and took off. I got paid, never went back. No one I worked with had ever even heard of this place or where it is. It has been so long I couldn't even tell you where in Maine it was. Nothing too scary, but it was spooky just not knowing what was staring at me. This is also circa April 2008. I was in New Mexico, out in the middle of nowhere. I thought it was an amazing area, so I stopped to get out and just look around and take a break and relax. I was sitting on a big-ass rock eating a sandwich. It was about 7 or 8 p.m., slowly getting dark. I was just listening to the wind and occasional coyotes or other animals. Becoming one with nature for an hour or so was nice. About halfway through my break, I heard footsteps, bipedal footsteps coming from behind. I stood up and turned around to see if maybe a meth head was coming up on me or something. I looked around and could hear footsteps coming closer, and I didn't see anyone. At this point, I was practically shitting myself. I decided the only sane thing I could do was just yell randomly like I was a crazy person. Maybe I'd scare it off. The footsteps stopped. My heart was still moving about 6,000 times a second. I then saw something much larger than a coyote running around about 100 yards off in the distance, looking like a big-ass dog with no tail. I was pretty much frozen in fear. I could see it seriously hauling ass, running around like I was blind and looking for me. I couldn't even hear the wind. It was like complete and utter silence. I then heard the sound of something running behind me, and I spun around about as fast as I could, and I saw something go by so fast it was a blur. I then screamed, threw my sandwich, tried to jump my fat ass off this rock, fell down and turned around on my back and ass, and saw this black shadow thing standing there. I screamed, and it just kind of dissipated, and there was a coyote behind it. Just a single lone coyote looking at me, not in a threatening way, like it protected me. I was shaking like a can of paint in one of those paint mixers. I stood up, and this coyote was just looking at me. I felt a rush of relief and safety. I turned around and walked back to my truck. I got in it, and this coyote had followed me. I got some lunch meat out and tossed it to the coyote. It scarfed it up and then took off. I have no idea what was running around. Maybe some feral hogs made their way to New Mexico. Who knows? The shadowy figure. Maybe when I fell off the rock, I hit my head. I just know I was scared shitless of what was running around. There is probably a reasonable explanation for what I saw and heard. It was still really weird and creepy.
Be me, working for a designated driving service a year ago. Taking a customer to a small town 20 miles from the town I work in. Very rural area, quite some space between houses. Customer lives just off of the main road in said town. Customer pays, I leave and get back on the main road. I saw no one driving at all in this area. It was 3 o'clock in the a.m. Drive about a quarter of a mile down main road, and on the side of the road I see a fire. No one was around. I was just there 4 minutes earlier. No one went up or down the main road the entire time. Pull the car over, get out, and stomp the fire out. After putting the fire out, notice that it was in the style of a campfire. Circular rock formation surrounding piled sticks. Whatever. Ever since this happened, I have noticed 3 different fires in the same fashion, not in the same town. One in the town I work in, one on the outskirts of town, and another in a town 15 miles away in the opposite direction. All with piled sticks and wood and a circular rock formation. It's really strange.
Okay, this isn't very spooky, but pretty weird. It was about a year ago. My mother and I were driving to my grandmother's house for some sort of family event. It was midday and sunny. We took the highway which goes through lots of crop fields and forests and stuff. This happened in Germany on the E30 right before Buchholz, I think. As we were driving along, we noticed some sort of smoke covering the road in the distance. As we got closer, everyone slowed down and turned on their lights. The smoke was white, evenly distributed, and almost fog-like but not very dense. I don't remember smelling anything. Because parts of the road are elevated, we thought it might have been coming from under the road. A few minutes later, we overtook a car that emitted extremely thick, sulfur-yellow smoke out of its back. I think the entire trunk was already filled with it. The back of the car didn't look very healthy and was dripping. The lane behind him was, of course, completely empty. I looked inside the car and the driver didn't seem to notice the smoke coming out of his car. Now here's the truly weird part about this. We had already been through the white smoke and were driving at normal speed when we overtook that car. The only explanation I could think of is that the smoke went invisible and returned as white fog a bit later. Anyway, after that happened, we saw black smoke rising behind a hill, and as we drove past it we could see that it was a straight-up tractor on fire next to a barn. As I looked to my right, I saw 2 more clouds of black smoke in the far distance. It was not particularly hot that day, and it definitely wasn't summer. We were super freaked out. Luckily nothing bad happened, and we got to our destination unharmed. Nothing like this has happened ever since. I wish I recorded the whole thing or took some pictures.
Those sorts of just weird situations make me think of Matrix glitches. I remember once at my first house growing up, I found a loose floorboard. House was built 1866. I lifted it up and saw something shiny. After 3 hours of trial and error, I finally pulled out a nickel from 1905. I was so excited. I put it in my knick-knack box. I checked up on it, like 30, maybe 45 minutes later, and it wasn't there. I checked under the floorboard. Wasn't there. Moped around the rest of the day. Checked the box a few more times over the next few days, but it was gone. About 3 years later, was eating dinner when my brother came in all excited. Mom, Dad, looked what I found. Same coin, same date, same wear, same place under the floorboard. I tell him to tape it down wherever he puts it. Next morning, my brother comes into the living room and looks me in the eyes. I put it back. He really didn't like me taking it, and then just goes to the table to eat breakfast. It was at that point I realized that we were way too used to living in a haunted house.
This is my dad's story. He had several close encounters with death during his life. But the last major accident was this. Late 70s, before I was born. Saturday, Dad had a dream about a voice telling him to not leave the house. He decided to not leave the house and chill for the weekend. Emergency from his job, there was an accident at a refinery. Dad was an engineer at an oil company, and he had to move there with several boxes of backup documents and blueprints needed for the repairs. Dad and a friend took the road, got the documents, and went there. Driving all night, halfway my dad was sleeping while his friend drove. Then one of the tires blew up and the driver lost control of the car. They ended up hitting a tree. The driver had several broken ribs and injuries on one of his arms. My dad broke his nose, several ribs, and was losing a lot of blood because he suffered several deep cuts. Couple of minutes later, a car stopped while my dad and his friend were trying to stop the blood. Black, new Mercedes, still smelling like a new car. The driver helped my dad and took both of them to the refinery, which also had the nearest hospital and emergency room. Dad, still conscious, asked the driver for his contact info before they arrived. The driver told him a name and an address. He also registered the same contact info at the refinery entrance. Fake address, fake name. My dad never found the guy who saved his life.
A long-time lurker, first-time poster. About 4 years ago when I was 20. My friend was driving and I was in the passenger seat, driving back home from a friend's house at 2 a.m. We're driving through what's usually a busy road in the town, but it was dead quiet. At a red light and ahead of us, we see a person standing on the side of the road. They're standing perfectly still, motionless. It was clearly a girl, and the way she stood was odd. She stood parallel to the road looking straight at the Plaza strip mall to my right. She was standing on the edge of the road with her toes touching the curb in front of her. so all I could see was the right side of her body. She was wearing what looked like an old Amish-style gown. I couldn't make out her face because she had a scarf covering her head, kinda how old-school Slavic grandmas do. My buddy Jeff, the driver, goes when the light turns green. I tell him to go slow cause this woman may be trying to commit self-termination and jump in front. It was summer and my window was down, and as we approached her, I rolled it up 3/4 up. As we slowly approached, I yelled out, "Ma'am, do you need any help?" She stood there motionless and silent. For some reason, I was genuinely concerned about her well-being. I recently had a friend who jumped in front of a train to take his life. I didn't want this person making the same mistake. We're in a fairly populated suburb of Chicago. Maybe it's some bullied or drunk or high kid coming home. I don't know what I was thinking. I tell Jeff to pull over to the plaza to the right of us, and let's just make sure she's okay. Didn't want to jump the gun and call the cops right away. Jeff agrees. We pull into the plaza and she's still standing there. She's facing the plaza and there's a row of empty parking spots in front of her. We pull up across from her. I shout out again and ask if she's okay or needs help. I still can't see her face as she's looking down and has the scarf on. She looks up and I get the most uncomfortable chills. I finally see her face and I freeze. It was a young woman with yellow glowing eyes. They were so bright, they lit up her face. Her face at first looked like it was covered in dark brown and gray scratches. The more I looked at her, the more it looked like scales, like the ones an alligator may have. I quickly looked at her hands to see if the skin matched her face. She was wearing gloves. It was summer. Who wears gloves in this 80-degree weather at night? I looked up at her face and was still panicking. She started to smile, but it was a toothless grin. She had no teeth. I look at Jeff, and he's clearly in shock and sees what I'm seeing. She takes a slow step forward and I yell drive. Jeff slams on the gas and we gun it. Wait, there's only one way in or out of the plaza. Jeff damn near flips his Jeep turning around at the speed we were going at in the plaza. We have to pass her again, but we're a good 100 feet away by the stores. She was still by the street. We pull out of the plaza and I turn to Jeff and ask him what the hell was that. He says, "Let's get out of here." I look back in the passenger side mirror and she's gone. One night I was with my older brother and some of his friends drinking. I told them the story. One of my brother's friends who's really into conspiracies told me I had an encounter with a reptilian. He told me I should be careful as I'll most likely have another encounter, as I saw their real figure. What does /X/ think?
I got one. I was 16, driving my first vehicle. Old Datsun pickup my uncle gave me. Driving on a back road with my brother and his girl. No agenda, just wasting gas. Come up behind a guy driving like he's drunk. I started mimicking his driving because I was an asshole. Figured he was just a shitty driver. Suddenly, brake lights. I stomp mine and skid to a stop only feet from him. He just sits there, brake lights bright, and the car is running. The driver's side door opens. Not looking for a beatdown, though my bro is hella excited to start some shit. I say, screw that and go around. Bro rolls down the window and throws up a middle finger as we drive by. I slam on my brakes when we get alongside the other car. The door is partly open, not a single person inside. Back up to look in the back seat, Bro leans out the window to look for the asshole. Empty. Suddenly, the half-open door swings all the way open, pinning my brother's fingers between it and my car. I stomp the gas. Bro sits down in seat holding a bloody hand. Look in the rear-view mirror. The car is right on my ass. Still no driver. I make a sharp turn trying to get away. Car slams on brakes in the middle of the road. Long straight away. Watch a car sitting on the road. As I'm getting ready to make another turn, every door on it opens at once. I never saw it again. We went straight to the hospital. My brother had to have surgery on his hand and had to squeeze silly putty for months afterward to get his fingers to work again. We never told anyone.
I have a quick one from Australia that my parents told me about. Not paranormal, but still. They were driving in Belanglo State Forest, a fairly isolated region in the state of Victoria. It had been less than a year since the first in a series of backpacker murders had taken place, and the police still had no idea of the identity of the killer. As they drove along this dirt track running through the forest, they came upon a utility vehicle blocking the road with two hillbilly types who seemed to be gathering firewood. They walked back to their truck, speaking to each other for a couple minutes, before finally moving it so my parents could drive through. Seemed pretty dodgy, since it turned out when the murders were solved, the police had suspected that the convicted killer, Ivan Milat, could not be working entirely alone. Mate, I have another story for you, which my mum told me about a few months ago. My mum has always liked to travel, and a few years before she had me and my brother, she was hitchhiking around Perth. She got picked up by this couple who seemed quite friendly, and they chatted for a fair while as they drove, and the couple decided to invite her into their home for some tea before my mum hit the road again, and she accepted. So my mum went into their home with them, and the woman went off somewhere to make tea, and she talked with the bloke for a bit, before he said he had to go to the loo and went off for a bit by himself, leaving her alone. She told me she felt like something was wrong, and after neither of them had shown up within a minute, she decided to quickly leave, and she went out of the house, back onto the road, and safely hitchhiked her way along the rest of her travels. Since it was just her gut feeling, she never had any reason to report it or anything, but not too long later, there was a highly publicised case on the telly, and when they showed the murderer's house, she recognised it, and realised she'd been picked up by the Bernies.
Sort of a driving-related story. Firefighter in North Carolina. Lots of smaller fire departments, around 3 to 4 really big ones, for the area. At the department around 2:15 or 2:30 a.m. Call comes in for structure fire. Mutual aid needed in some bum area south of my station. Me and the engineer on duty jump in our engine while our ladder truck is waiting for a secondary call-out. We go hauling ass through these windy-ass mountain roads, and at the top, you can see the orange glow from the fire. Just to point out, this causes your nerves to kick in, knowing this is going to be a tough fight and if there's still people inside. We're about a half-mile away. Looks like a fog. Nope, it's smoke. Start smelling the worst stench ever, like death. Smoke is getting thicker as we pull up within a couple hundred yards. Can't see anything. Get to the long-ass dirt road that gets to this dude's house. We're the second engine to respond. Waiting for the other truck to get to the house and clear us to pull in. Just looking around, hooking up air pack, etc. Look out the window. See a man standing there in a tank top and boxers. Shrugged it off as a bystander. Look again. See 10 kids all standing around him. Lose my mind but try to be a badass. Tell the engineer it's just nerves. About a week after, I was watching the footage from the night on the dash cam. Right when it gets to the point where I saw the guy with the kids, it just freezes. Time counter keeps rolling, but the image doesn't move. Learn a couple days after that, the old man would take kids from abusive families and give them to DSS. I guess those were the kids he couldn't help.
Oh man, I've got one. Brit here, and when I was about 13 years old, me and my dad and uncle went on a road trip over the US for my birthday. Was awesome, the first time I'd ever been abroad. We're pretty poor, but my uncle works in the States and is loaded. So we went around San Francisco, and to be honest, I don't remember many of the names of the states, but we spent a while driving through the desert. Anyway, one time we were driving through this desert, trying to find the black mailbox, found it, took photos, etc. A couple days later, we were driving through the desert and my uncle stopped the car for a break because he'd been driving for about 6 solid hours. So I get out and take a few photos of the desert and then go back in for a nap, and my dad gets out to go for a walk. About half an hour later, he comes back freaked out and just tells my uncle to drive away, not too fast, not too slow. I was scared because I'd never seen my dad like that. Turns out he'd been wandering and come to this, concrete building place. One story, and it has a sign saying, farm fresh foods, which was weird because we were in the desert. But he's a chatty guy and wants to go talk to whoever owned the place. So he goes around the corner and there's just a pram, pushchair, stood next to this weird building, and he walked towards it and it started shaking. Dad is weirded out because if there was a baby in it, surely it would be crying. He notices this security cam on the wall of the building pan over to him, even though he got no reply knocking on the door to this place. There's no windows either, but that means there's someone in the building. Pram shakes harder. Still no sounds. Silent. Dad has seen too many horror films for this. Turns around and walks to the car like nothing is wrong. Doesn't tell me what happened till we were out of there. That desert was so creepy, I swear. I thought we'd never get out. I'm home. Got a couple more from that desert. This one's probably the freakiest. Bear in mind that during this road trip, there was a lot of late-night driving, and I'm an easily spooked, all-about scary stuff kind of person. So it was the day after the creepy not farm thing happened, I think. Still in the desert, running low on fuel and water, and basically freaking out. We had been trying to get out for like 4 hours, and should have come across something hours ago. But it had been almost a whole day since the last service station, and it had been hot all day. We had only like 4 bottles of water left and about 60 miles in the tank. My dad and uncle were arguing over the maps, and I was unable to sleep and already suffering from insomnia, so I was really tired and dehydrated. Did not want to waste the water. So I was looking out of the window of the Mustang my uncle rented in the desert. You couldn't really see much except the stars, and they'd stopped the car to argue over the sat-nav. Yeah, like we could make a wrong turn on hundreds of miles of straight road. But to be honest, there wasn't much else to do, so I was playing around with this light-up pen I had, flashing it out of the window, practicing Morse code, and generally trying to look out, literally counting cactuses. It had been 7 hours in the car, so I was just playing with this torch, and it might have just been the sleep deprivation, but I swear to God, I was sending out random words in Morse code, and when I signaled hello, I swear I saw a flash in the distance. So I did it again, stopped flashing after, and I swear something signaled hello back. So I was slightly out of my mind with sleep deprivation, but terrified, curious, and stupid. I decided to check whether I was finally losing my mind, so I signaled, "Who there?" Morse code was not my forte, nor was grammar. I waited a couple of seconds, and then I saw flashing again, far in the distance, just on an outcrop of rock, about 200 meters out of my window. It signaled a friend. Now, I was absolutely scared out of my mind, but didn't want to tell my dad yet, so I signaled back, "What's up?" I got cold back. Signaled, "What got? Are you warm back?" So I screamed for my dad, told him there was something on the rocks signaling to me. My dad, being the paranoid man he was, jumped out of the car and yelled, "Who's out there?" One of the rocks on the top of the pile moved. My dad got back in the car and we drove away. He lectured me, who knows what about, and my uncle told me that we'd be out of the desert soon and that it was probably just a camper. Who camps in the middle of the desert without a fire and is the size of a large boulder? We got to a diner at dawn. I ate an entire American-sized ice cream sundae and passed out on a couch. To this day, my dad swears I was just hallucinating from sleep deprivation, and my uncle won't talk about it. It was the scariest experience of my life, and I'm getting intense goosebumps typing this. I stopped trying to learn Morse after that.
Be about 13. Had 3 friends sleep over. Got dropped off by Mum at the movies at about 8 p.m. Picked up at 10 p.m. again by Mum. We live on the outskirts of town. The road to get home goes right past the ocean, so it often gets kind of foggy. Quite a foggy night. Get to the area of the road where the speed limit drops down to 50. Up in the headlights we can see a figure. As we get closer, it looks like a really tall guy wearing robes with a hood holding a big stick. Mum slows down as we go past. It becomes visible as we get closer that he's holding either a scythe or a huge pickaxe. White human hands protruding from the robes are visible. Despite Mum leaving her high beams on, we couldn't see his face, the light beaming almost directly at it. Overcome with that real primal fear, I scream at my mum to hurry up and get us out of here. Get home. Spooked the rest of the night. I know it's the most cliche foggy night bullshit, but it genuinely happened. Most likely it was some nut job trying to mess with people. I visited my hometown last summer and hung out with one of the guys who was there. Both 21 now. We ended up doing acid together, and he brought that night up again and we spoke about it for a while.
I don't think this is /x/, but since the area where this happened is known for UFO-related stuff, I guess it counts. Be me, driving at night across desolated, desertic mountain area in my country. Around 4 a.m., see a small Chevy Monza parked at the side of the road, carrying 2 kayaks, lights out, all 4 doors open. No one in sight. I didn't stop, but I decided to call the police as soon as I could. At 6 a.m., I arrived in a little town and used a payphone, since cell phones don't work around here, to inform the police about the car. The lady on the phone thanks me for the information, and I hit the road again. Several days later, I heard from the news about some tourists who have been missing for days. The abandoned car was found near the road thanks to the tip from some unknown driver. Police are still searching for the unknown driver for questioning. I don't know what to do, but in the end, I decided to forget about it. This happened during February last year. The tourists were never found, and I'm still the main suspect. Remember to always give your full information to the police to avoid being mistaken for a serial killer.
Not paranormal, but weird, considering I didn't have an explanation for it at the time. Driving with my husband all the way from Louisiana to Delaware. 28-hour drive. We're on day 2. It's 11 p.m. We're tired, but we're almost in Dover finally. Slow down and get off the highway to some back roads around what we think is a residential area. We're expecting some sort of large metropolitan area by now, but all we can see are patches of woods and houses spread out in the middle of nowhere. We drive onto a road that is actually called Slaughter Street. On Slaughter Street, there are a load of gravestones dating as far back as the 1800s. Something large and reflective is coming up further ahead. Its lights aren't on. It's not a car. It's going far below the speed limit. The only way we can make it out is by the blood-red smudges of our own headlights bouncing off the reflectors. As we get closer, our headlights illuminate more of the mystery box, and we can just barely make out the shining coat of a horse's ass. It's a horse and buggy. We pass it. It's full of bewildered people in petticoats and overalls and bonnets. We later discovered that Dover has a very large integrated Amish population. My face when I see Amish people shop at Walmart. My face when I see Amish people eat at Burger King. My face when I see an Amish woman pumping gas into her Dodge Ram.
They're Mennonites. They're like pseudo-Amish. Work on farms, sell produce at farmers markets. BUPS driver making a late delivery at about 7-ish. Already pretty dark since it was January. See the house I'm supposed to deliver to. Driveway is long. Great, I have to drive it up. Had to open this big-ass creaky gate, finally get up to the house. House looks too poor to have such a nice entryway. Walk up to the front door and find a note. Please deliver around the back. Thank you. Fuck you. Fine, walk around to the back. Right before the turn to get on the back porch is a window. Looks like it's covered by a pure white poster from the inside. Only viewed in my periphery. Drop off package on porch. Walk past the window again. Shit is pure black and has a faint, deep, gurgling, growling noise coming from it. Nope, 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 nope. Sprinted to the front door. Maybe it was a messed up dog. Knocked rapidly. Lady in her late 20s answers. I ask, do you guys have a dog? No. WTF, I ask. If you don't mind my asking, what is the last door on the left of the house? It's an old storage room, why? Do you live here alone? Yes. All right, sorry, have a good night, miss. Good night to you too. Go back around to the window. Scared out of my shit, get to the window. Window is back to pure white with no background noise. 2 years later, still working for UPS. I get another package I have to deliver at the same address around the same time of night. I tell my manager no, I explain why. He calls me a coward, ain't give a fuck. Some other guy makes the delivery and I tell him to tell me every detail that happens. He reports back to me and tells me that nothing seemed out of the ordinary whatsoever.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.